Hi everyone, in today's lesson we're going to talk about how to graph sine and cosine curves. But before we can do that, I'd like to recall working with equations and graphs from yesterday. So given this equation, -8 sine 7x, find the amplitude, period, cycles, and the interval. Okay, so the amplitude, remember, is the absolute value. So if this is y equals A sine bx, the absolute value of A is the amplitude. The B value is the number of cycles. Okay, so in this case, the amplitude would be the absolute value of -8, which is 8. The cycles would be 7, which is in front of the x. And recall the formula for period is equal to 2 pi over b, where b is the number of cycles, so 2 pi over 7. And remember, interval is what we count by, and it's defined by period over 4. So the period is 2 pi over 7, so 2 pi over 7 all over 4. And remember, to simplify this, we can keep, change, and flip. And if you simplify, this comes out 2 pi over 14. That would be my interval. Okay, now the second question. Write the equation of the sine curve that has a period of 6 pi and an amplitude of 4. Okay, so to answer this question, what we're going to need to do is kind of what we have up here. We need to write an equation, y equals A sine bx. Well, they tell us the amplitude is 4, so y equals 4 for the A. And then the problem is that we don't know what the number of cycles are. So we can have a sine, and then we need b times something. So we know that we have a period of 6 pi. So, well, what do we know about the period formula? We know that period is equal to 2 pi over b, where b is the number of cycles. So we know the period is 6 pi, so I'm going to substitute the period to be 6 pi equals 2 pi over b. We could put this over 1 and cross multiply. So 2 pi equals 6 pi b. And to solve for b, I'm just going to divide by 6 pi. The pi's will cancel, so b is equal to 2 divided by 6, which is 1/3. So 4 sine 1/3 x. Okay, let's see if we could do the last one on this page. Okay, so given this graph below, can we determine the following information? What is the amplitude? So if you recall, the amplitude is how high up the graph goes from the line of center, which in this case is the x-axis. So here we can measure our amplitude by the highest peak. So our amplitude is 3. Now, some of you may have heard this word frequency before, but we're actually going to replace the word every time you see a frequency. We're going to replace it with cycles. They mean the same thing. Okay? So we want to know, how many complete cycles do I see between 0 and 2 pi? Well, here's 2 pi, and I haven't actually completed a full cycle. I completed half of a cycle. So the number of cycles here is a half. Okay? Now I know it's a sine curve because it's starting at the origin, so a full cycle would have continued and looked something like that. That would have been one full cycle. Okay? So that answers my next question. What is the period? Period is, how long would this thing take to complete one full cycle? Well, if it takes 2 pi to complete half a cycle, then it must take 4 pi to complete one full cycle. Okay? And now if we want to make the equation, since we know that it's sine, it's y equals A sine bx. A is the amplitude, which we know is 3. And b is the number of cycles that we see between 0 and 2 pi. We see a half. So the answer here is 3 sine 1/2 x. Okay, now the domain is from what's given. I have from 0 to 2 pi. That's my x values of this graph. And the range is how tall this thing is. So it goes from 3 to 0. It doesn't go any lower. So we always put the smaller number first. So we'll say 0 to 3. Okay, I didn't realize there was a last question, but here we go. Number 4. Draw the sketch of the following functions. So I'm going to draw an xy axis for each one. And I want to draw some sketches. Okay? So a sine curve, we know, starts at the origin and goes up, down, and back up again. And we know that a negative sine curve will still start at the origin, but instead of going up first, it'll go down. Okay? Cosine starts up at 1, and it will go down, up again. And negative cosine will just start at -1 and go up and then back down. So these 4 pictures need to be committed to memory in order to be successful graphing. So let's move on to the next page and see if we can graph some. Okay, so number 5 says graph y equals 2 sine 3x over the interval from 0 to 2 pi. Okay, we're going to need a few things here. We're going to need the amplitude. We're going to need the number of cycles. We're going to need the period. And we're going to need the interval. So I like to call this ACPI. Okay? So we know that the amplitude is the number in front of the sine. So that's 2. We know the cycles is the number right before the x. So that's 3. And the period we know is 2 pi over b, where b is the number of cycles. So 2 pi over 3 is my period. And the interval we know is the period over 4. So we're going to take 2 pi over 3 and divide it by 4, remembering that we could keep change and flip. And when we simplify this, this is 2 pi times 1, which is 2 pi, over 3 times 4, which is 12, which reduces to pi over 6. Okay, so if you can find the A, the C, the P, and the I, you are 90% there in making the graph. So remember I talked about interval is what we count by? That's actually what's going to go on the x-axis. So do you see here this says pi over 6? This is really the same thing as saying 1/6 pi. So if I had said just, to count by 2s, everybody would go 2, 4, 6, 8. And if I said count by 5s, you would go 5, 10, 15, 20, right? What if I say count by halves? Everyone would say 1/2, then 1, and then 1.5. But how do I get that? Much easier. You would say 1/2, then 2 halves, which is 1, then 3 halves, which is 1 and 1/2. So we're going to do the same thing here with the 6th. So we have 1/6 pi, and we're going to write it here on the bottom. So 1/6 pi, 2/6 pi, 3/6 pi, 4/6 pi, 7/6 pi, 8/6 pi, 9/6 pi, 10/6, 11/6, and 12/6. Now, why did I stop here? Okay, I counted all the way up to 12 over 6. And the reason why I did that is because 12 over 6 can reduce to 2 pi. 12 divided by 6 is my ending point of this interval. This is 2 pi. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tick marks. So we're only going from 0 to 2 pi, so we could start our y-axis all the way back here. And we could put our x-axis somewhere in the middle. Okay? And we can set up my amplitude. We know the amplitude goes up 2 and down 2. I'm going to count up a few boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll put 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll put 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and now like I had said, we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tick marks. So I'm going to count by twos. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So to label them, it's going to be a little tedious, but we could do it. The first one is pi over 6. Then 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi, 5 pi, 6 pi, 7 pi, we actually need more. I need 12. So we need 11 pi over 6, 12 pi over 6. It looks like I must have missed my counting. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Whoop, I missed 5 and 6. I don't know. Don't ask me how I went from 4 pi over 6 to 7 pi over 6. So in here I needed a 5 pi over 6 and a 6 pi over 6. So we need 12 tick marks. Okay. So now that we've set up our x-axis and we've set up our y-axis, the only thing left to do now is to graph a sine curve. So you want to ask yourself, where does sine start? Does it start at 0 or does it start at 1? Okay, so it starts at 0. So our first point is going to be here. And now you want to ask yourself, what does the sine curve look like? So you just go like this. So it goes from the center up to the amplitude. So the next tick mark is going to be at the amplitude, which is at 2. And then where does it go from there? It goes back down to the axis. So my next point is going to be here. And then it goes down to the minimum. So my next point is going to be here. And then it goes back up to the axes. And then we repeat. So the next point is going to go up, down, down, up, up, down, down, up. So 1, 2, 3. So do you see here? Now we have 3 cycles from 0 to 2 pi. Here's 1, 2, and 3. Okay, let's see if we can graph the last one. All right, so we want to graph -3 cos 2x over the interval from -2 pi to 2 pi. So we need the a, the c, the p, and the I. So take a minute, see if you can figure that out, and then hit resume when you're ready. Okay, the amplitude is the absolute value of -3, which is 3. The number of cycles is 2. The period is 2 pi over b, where b is the number of cycles. So 2 pi over 2 is pi, and the interval is period over 4. So I'm going to take pi over 4 and count by fourths. So 1/4 pi, 2/4 pi, 3/4 pi, 4/4 pi, 5/4 pi, 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4 pi. Now I'm going to stop at 8/4 because 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now the interval tells me that I want to go from -2 pi to 2 pi. So that means when I graph my axes need to be in the middle. So here and here. Okay, so I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tick marks on both sides. I'm going to count by twos and see if I can work with that. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, mine won't work. So I'll have to count by ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So I'll label this as 1/4 pi, 2/4 pi, 3/4 pi, 4/4 pi, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4. All right, so I want to graph -3 cosine. So in your head, you want to be thinking, what does a negative cosine graph look like? It looks something like this. So we start down and go up, up, down, down. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start down at the amplitude, but we need to put our amplitude, which is 3. So I'm going to count by 2's. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to start our graph down here, and we're going to go up, up, down, down, up, up, down, and down. So up, up, down, and down. So what I just did was I graphed -2 pi to 2 pi. Well, excuse me, I only graphed from 0 to 2 pi. So if you want to graph from -2 pi to 2 pi, you'll have to continue this to the left side of the graph. So I'm going to leave that part for you to do for homework. So finish this side for homework, and we'll talk about it in class tomorrow. But let's just review to make sure we did everything correct. We've got 1 cycle, 2 cycles, so the cycles are 2. I see 1 period, so 1 full cycle in pi. So look, here's 1 full cycle. This is 6 pi over 6, which is pi. That's 1 full cycle. And I have an amplitude of 3. My highest value is 3. My lowest value is 3. All right, so jot down any questions that you might have, and we'll ask tomorrow in class.